Good morning, everybody. It is Monday, July 7th. Hope everyone had a wonderful Independence Day weekend. This is a joint committee with the Transportation and Environment Committee and the Planning, Housing, and Parks Committee. This is a joint session to take up OLO report on street classification and the master planning process, dynamic policies, and static documents. A good title. We'll learn more about what that means. But I want to first thank Councilmember Luedtke for commissioning this SMART report. I know that the findings and recommendations, which we will discuss, will help make street classification and transportation planning more accessible and easier for people to understand. We have a lot of documents that are online, but it doesn't make them necessarily easier for people to navigate. No pun intended. One of the main highlights of the report is that while the county adopts new transportation policies like the pedestrian master plan and the master plan of highways and transitways, which is coming to the T&E committee soon enough, those updates can override older master plans without residents realizing it. So it's trying to figure out which document is more relevant and more pertinent. I'm sure Councilmember Luedtke will share more information about why she commissioned this report and the streets in her particular district. But the report does recommend, among other action items, that the county add direct links to every master plan webpage so that people can clearly see what changes are coming to their neighborhood without having to dig through multiple plans. That is a high-level summary. Before we dig into the details, I'll turn it over to the PHP chair, Councilmember Friedson, for any additional comments.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Great to be here. Really appreciate the OLO report. Mr. Tromka for all of the work. Appreciate planning for being here as well. Appreciate Councilmember Luedtke for requesting this and look forward to the conversation today. And then ultimately to the follow-up, much of which will likely be in PHP, since most of the follow-up will actually be planning department and work plan related issues. But look forward to the conversation today and going through the report, and appreciate the fact that we're here.
Very good. Before we turn it over to Mr. Trumka, I'll turn it over to Councilmember Luedtke.
Thank you, co-chairs Glass and Friedson. Before I head up to public safety, and thank you, Mr. Tromka, for all of your hard work on this, and Mr. Ansbacher for your assistance with the planning. I know the planning department put a lot of effort into assisting with this project. Where did I come up with this idea? Well, let's just say we get a lot of calls asking a lot of questions from constituents who say, but I saw this in the master plan and this doesn't make sense. How do they determine? Because we will mention, well, there are these other plans that we all have to have and reconcile together. So finding a way to identify where there may be questions that lay people or property owners may have as they look at the master plans, and then how to understand the prioritization of our other plans, like our street classification, our pedestrian safety, bicycle master plans. And so this was something that came into my mind right towards the end of when we were completing the pedestrian master plan back in 2023. And those are important because we want to advance our pedestrian safety goals, and we have to be mindful of our sidewalks and our crosswalks, et cetera, and potentially dangerous traffic related things, which is a big priority for me, traffic safety in the realm of vehicle safety, pedestrian safety, and bicycle safety. And so especially where we have a lot of redevelopment issues in all of our districts, that comes up a lot. How do we know which would apply, what doesn't apply, and how to make this work? And so taking a look at that, we saw, and the report found, that it's not clear when you're on the web pages for the master plans what else applies or how to prioritize that the last adopted, and you wouldn't know what the last adopted was, applies to that particular lot, property, et cetera. And so for me, it's important that we avoid confusion with respect to policymaking, and that government does the best possible job it can in communicating externally to those who want to rely on this information. Government websites are not always known for being intuitive, right? And I know we try to improve upon them over time, and I think that's where we have some room to grow here with taking the information that we have and making it easier for our residents, our property owners to discern. So thank you for your recommendations and some ideas on how to better display the data and make it more user-friendly. That's frankly going to be more user-friendly for us and our offices as well. So I appreciate that. Look forward to hearing what you have to say. I'll stay as long as I can before I have to depart for public safety. Thank you.
Hit the light, so.
Very good.
All right, and good morning, council members. It's going to take no more than 10 minutes to walk through this report, and thank you to introduction from the two chairs and from Councilmember Lutke. So, very briefly, our assignment was to study the relationship among functional master plans, area master plans, and other planning documents to help understand which document governs when there's an apparent policy conflict. And to make the report more concrete, we focused on a single planning issue, which was street classifications, or the categorization of streets based on function, purpose, and use. Traditionally, street classifications emphasize automotive mobility and property access, but in 2021, the county adopted the complete streets approach, which is a multimodal emphasis based on land use context and street function. And we have the Complete Street Design Guide, which we'll discuss more in a couple of minutes, but that established guidelines for different types of mobility, automobile transit, bicycle, pedestrian movement, as well as street design. And this slide shows just some of the elements that are governed by the Complete Street Design Guide. So how are street classifications established in Montgomery County? It's a fairly complex process, and it's the product of 4 types of governing documents. The county code, functional master plan, area master plan.
Turn left, Aaron. I don't know if your mic's on. Turn to the left.
Oh, this mic. Either one. This one's on. All right. Now we on?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. But we're going to move forward. Area master plans and complete street design guide. So starting with the county code, the sections of the code that address street classifications were comprehensively amended in 2022. And the amendments established 5 interim, that's important, interim land use area types for the purpose of street classifications. In the code, it named 9 downtown areas specifically, 23 named town center areas, and then it established criteria describing additional areas called country, industrial, and suburban. But the code anticipated that these would be interim area designations and would be subsequently replaced by permanent designations established by functional and area master plans. The 2022 code amendments also established 18 specific street classifications, as seen in the slide. Some of these are similar to the previous classifications. Some of them were brand new, particularly those based on those new area designations. In addition, the code established a crosswalk between the previous and new sets of street classifications. So, for example, a street that was now in a town center, but previously classified as a major highway, was reclassified by the code in a new classification called a town center boulevard. And the crosswalk addressed all the different types of street classifications. So now we'll talk about the role of functional master plans in the street classification process. And a functional master plan is a plan that addresses a countywide function, such as transportation or historic preservation, that spans multiple planning areas. The first functional plan to talk about is the pedestrian master plan, as Councilmember Lutke referred to, which was approved in October 2023. And this was the first plan to advance countywide implementation of the Complete Streets approach. The pedestrian plan replaced interim area type designations from the county code with new permanent area designations throughout the county. And the plan stated that it would be the master plans of highways and transitways that would reevaluate street classifications to ensure that each road is, quote, accurately and contextually classified. The pedestrian plan expanded the number of town center areas from 23 locations listed in the code to a total of 46 locations, and the plan also identified 9 industrial areas not specified in the county code. So here already we see some things in the pedestrian plan that affected area master plans outside of those area master plans. The plan also included detailed maps showing the boundaries of each downtown, town center, and industrial area. Here's an example, the Sandy Spring Town Center map, as shown in the pedestrian plan. Next, we move on to the master plan of highways and transitways, another functional plan. The current plan was last approved in 2018. An update is now pending, as the chair mentioned, as the T&E chair mentioned, and in fact, the public hearing on this plan is tomorrow. So stay tuned for that.
Where? Yes.
Yep.
Very well aware.
Yep. The latest version of the master plan of highways reassesses previously assigned street classifications throughout the county, and the document also notes that the plan is amended every time an area master plan or functional master plan is approved by the council. Another important point referenced by several council members before. Each plan amends another plan. So now let's go to those area master plans. And for these, we need to distinguish between plans approved before the 2022 code amendments and the plans approved afterward. An example of the pre-2022 plan is Upper Rock Creek Master Plan, which was approved back in 2004. And so if you look up this document or all other older master plans, it contains a table showing streets and their classifications under the old pre-2022 classification system. But all of these classifications in the Upper Rock Creek Plan were revised by the 2022 County Code Amendments to align with the new complete streets classification. So, for example, if you saw in the Upper Rock Creek Plan a street that was labeled an arterial and it had 2 lanes and it was in a town center, it's now reclassified as a town center street. In contrast, newer area master plans, such as the Fairland and Big Stray Plan, were developed under the complete streets approach. And so these plans use the new street classifications approved by the council in 2022. The final document, as we mentioned before, is the Complete Streets Design Guide, first approved in 2021 and updated in 2024. And the key takeaway is that the guide is intended to affect future street construction based on master plan and functional plan recommendations, and that the complete street implementation is dependent on the master plan of highways and transitways. So you see the interrelationship between all of these planning documents. One interacts with the other, one amends the other. So to summarize the street classification process, 2022 code amendments established a process for assigning these area designations and the street classifications. The code also established interim designations that are subject to modification by future functional and area master plans. The master plan street classifications are also subject to future modification by future master plans and functional plans. And finally, and this is the answer to the question about how to reconcile different documents, the functional area master plans each modify one another and the latest plan governs. But the answer to the question is also the source of the confusion. Because not only can one plan amend another, most newly approved plans amend multiple other plans. So looking at the right side of the slide, this very, very long text is the resolution approving the pedestrian plan, and it indicates that that plan amended every other functional and area master plan in the county. So if a resident were to read almost any master plan, they would not see current policies as many were amended in the pedestrian plan and other plans. So the result, the title of the report, is Dynamic Policies such as ever-evolving street classifications that appear in static and unchanging master plan documents, which leads to the question, how can a resident learn the current area designations and their corresponding street classifications? So Planning Department does maintain an online tool called MC Atlas that can be searched for classifications of individual streets, but people are not really well trained in MC Atlas will be challenged to quickly find this information. There are other tools, a transit layout line map and a map book, which are also 2 other interactive maps that allow casual users to look for current street classifications. But these tools are very difficult to find on the web page. And most importantly, at present, none of these tools are accessible from or even mentioned on the home pages for area master plans. The Planning Department website does have unique web pages for each area master plan where you can access the plan as it was written when it was approved, but without any indication of how that plan may have been amended by other plans. Which leads to the discussion questions. How can the Planning Department make up-to-date street classification information more accessible to the public? And more specifically, should the Planning Department embed direct links to street classification tools in area master plan homepages? And if so, if that's true for street classifications, then what other dynamic planning and development information, some of them mentioned by Councilmember Lutke, should appear in area master plans? And so with that, that summarizes the report. I'll turn back on the lights and turn it back to the chairs.
Thank you very much, Mr. Trumka, for that debrief. Quick and to the point. Appreciate it. And I see Mr. Ansbacher is here. I don't know if he wants to preemptively come up in case anyone has any thoughts or questions. I presume they will. Any other council staff who wants to come up? One of the slides, Mr. Trumka, that you showed was how many different plans changed as a result of the pedestrian master plan. That slide. Do we know, or can you have a number as to how many?
Every.
Oh, just every, okay. It looked like 25 to me, but just every.
There were a few small functional master plans that weren't, but every area master plan was amended.
So fair to say dozens.
Any plan with streets in it.
Any
Any plan with streets.
That's the answer.
That's it. How many do we expect will change because of the master plan of highways and transit ways? Is that a similar correlation? Yeah.
For the record, David Ansbacher, I'm the chief of the Transportation Planning Division at Montgomery Planning. Both the pedestrian master plan and the master plan of highways and transitways are county-wide plans. So as was stated, any plan with a street recommendation will be amended. So it's probably in the 40 to 50 range.
And then last question I have right now. How do zoning text amendments interplay with this discussion?
I would say to a lesser degree. I would think maybe the sectional map amendments might, where you're applying new zoning to a particular master plan that's different than the zoning that was in the printed document. A zoning text amendment is more the rules for that zone. And so that's a little bit beyond. Thank you, Pam.
They were all on standby, yeah.
Good morning. Right, I don't think a zoning text amendment might have an impact only as that text amendment could change something in the zoning code related to maybe parking or, tangentially parking design that access to street. But it would be very tangential to the street code, which is a different chapter of the code. And then the sectional map amendments, they implement the master plans, and so you've already had the discussion in the master plan itself when you see the document and you go through all that text and you see what the proposed recommendations for those classifications are. That's in the text of the master plan. The sectional map amendment then puts down the zoning. So they're kind of separate, interrelated, but what you're asking is, does the zoning text amendment change master plans in the same way? But no, I would say not.
And there are minor amendments to master plans that change the zoning, which could also be a change from the original master plan, although the planning board website often, for many master plans, will reference and have a link to a minor master plan amendment within that same planning area.
And the reason I ask is because this whole conversation is about transparency and having residents be better able to understand. And so the different types of processes that were not mentioned that I just asked about, there is interaction, there's interplay lesser than these two major ones that we're discussing. Important for people to understand. Chair Friedson.
Thank you. Appreciate it. It shows how complicated zoning is, which we always appreciate an understanding of. From planning's perspective, I very much appreciate the reason for the report. I very much share in the goal here, which is to be as clear as possible, to have a a one-door policy, not just in getting county services, but obtaining information from the county. And the idea that you could go to one place and get the information that you're looking for and make sure that it's right is important. It's what we're all here to do, and it's our function, our job. Could you just share, from an implementation standpoint, operationalizing what this would mean, how planning could implement it, what that would look like?
Yeah, just to start, we've already started to implement some of the recommendations in the report. I do want to commend, first of all, Mr. Tromka on the report. It was exceptionally well researched, documented. It's a lengthy report, but the findings are very succinct, and I think the recommendations are very clear. We share the sentiment. We want to make master plan recommendations as clear as possible. In doing so, we have to strike a balance, right? We have web pages. If we provide too little information on a web page, it's not useful. And I think that's what we're talking about here today. If we provide too much information on a web page, it's also not useful because it becomes overwhelming. And I think one of the findings of Mr. Tromka was that one of our web pages, MC Atlas, has a ton of information in it, but it can be very difficult to navigate because it has too much information. So when we think about all the recommendations in the report, which we think are most important to evaluate and to implement, we thought those that are most directly related to master plans, street classification, and the bikeway recommendations, as well as to development review and approvals, because that's a core function of the department. Those are the ones that we think should be implemented. And we have begun to add links on our neighborhood planning web pages for street classification, for the bikeway recommendations, and for development review. As we are doing this, I think many of you know that the department reorganized effective July 1st. That required a whole reworking of our webpage, so we put this project on hold while that was complete. That is now complete as of this morning, I understand, and so we are going to get back to finishing implementing the recommendations.
Got it. All right. Well, I would suggest for the implementation piece that we have a follow-up conversation in Planning, Housing, and Parks Committee to talk about this and its relationship to the work program and how exactly it would be implemented, if that makes sense, and then we can report back on the specific transportation-related elements of this, because there's a broader dynamic of how we implement changes to functional master plans and how we present information from the, from park and planning that I think we need to talk about in the broader context, that the core of that is the implementation of this OLO report. So that would be my suggestion. I think it's important. I'm glad that planning is already moving forward with this. We've had constructive conversations, so thank you to our colleague for raising this, and thank you most importantly to constituents who, I always say our best ideas are seldom ours, and this is a good example of that. So with that, I'll yield back.
That's great. Councilmember Jawando.
Do you want to go, Don? Or you?
No. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Yeah, appreciate it, and I'm glad you mentioned the reorganization, Mr. Ansbacher. I was going to ask, where did you got new responsibilities? Can you just make that clear? You mentioned part of the title, but what changed for you?
Previously, I was the chief of the countywide planning and policy division. That included a component of our transportation planners. It also included zoning, housing, and historic preservation. I'm sort of going back to my roots. My roots are as a transportation planner, and with this reorganization, we are creating a number of functional divisions. So there is a transportation planning division, so I am now overseeing all of the transportation planning activities.
And the other stuff was distributed to other people.
Correct.
Yeah, I've been reading through. It's good to know that website is updated. I think that along with the zones is something we've been getting some questions about of who's in what zone and then who's doing what. So I think we'll need to, as I know you all are focused on, make sure people understand. Speaking of understanding, understand what planning areas are and what the responsibilities of people are, and that'll take some time even for council members here. But Appreciate you, and congratulations to going back to your roots.
Thank you.
The other thing I wanted to just mention, Councilmember Glass, Chair Glass mentioned this a little bit, I think, in his questioning. You know, obviously the ZTAs, I raised this in the context of ZTA 2502 last week or 2 weeks ago, in that part of what it does, it says these road types are eligible for this type of housing. And so if the road type changes, which could happen, something could come in or out of being allowed or disallowed. Is that a fair statement?
Yes, that would be correct if it triggers one of the criteria in 2502.
And could you just talk about the process of how you would know that on a master plan page? You know, like how would you see that?
The ZTA has a number of criteria in it, including some street classifications. And so if a street is one of the boulevards, a downtown boulevard, a town center boulevard, or a boulevard today, or one of the other two street types, and I'm forgetting those, you could check our map, mcatlas.org/MPOHT.
You have to go to MC Atlas to check at this point. It wouldn't be on the, because I'm just.
You would go to our street classification map, which will be located on each of our area master plan web pages.
Okay, so you could see it on the area master plan itself as well.
Correct. Once we are done implementing that recommendation from the report, you'll be able to see them.
Got it. Okay, so that'll help solve for that
Right.
too. Because again, the clarity is you want to be able to go to the street. What can happen here? What cannot? Like very practical. People are using that. I've tried to load MC Atlas now, albeit the council office building internet is notoriously not great, especially up here. But I am getting internet and other things, and I've reloaded it, and it's not reloading. It's a hefty website to bring up.
I am told that it works. The issue this morning is on the county's side of things,
Okay.
is what I understand.
Well, I
'Cause I checked as well.
Okay.
It works. It works
It works
for
anywhere, not in the
us.
county
It works
building.
for us at home. It's
Okay,
not
got it,
working on the
got it.
county right now.
Okay. All right. Well, good. I'm glad for the public. Okay. Well, yeah, exactly. Well, thank you for that. I just want to make that clear, and I appreciate Mr. Tromka and Ms. Lukey, Councilmember Lukey. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Lutke.
Before I go, just this slide sort of epitomizes why this is important. And my ask is, now that you're starting to implement different recommendations, and as you work with the committees on future things that might need to be tweaked or done to make things more accessible, nobody's going to read that resolution, right? But what they would read is an infographic that gives you a flow chart of how to do the things, how to read the things, that is in, plain language, that is not the now, therefore, and the 50 things that got changed. So my ask would be, once you all get through the pieces where you're making the adjustments based on the recommendations and subsequent input from the committees of jurisdiction, that some kind of either FAQ and or infographic is made available to the public so that they understand the utility of the different pieces of what's available to the public. All right, with that, I'm off.
Thank you. I will take that back.
Thank you again, Councilmember Lutke, for commissioning the report and for the conversation. And you're right, this slide, this is what it's all about, making sure people can understand all of those different master plans, sector plans, and so forth. Chair Friedson.
Thank you. Just just to be clear, on the 2502 and the zoning text question, there's also the other requirements. So it's not just the road classification requirement, 3 or more travel lanes, 100 feet of master plan width. So, it's just an example that, just changing the classification wouldn't impact directly unless it met the other classifications and requirements as well. But it speaks to the broader dynamic here of, why it would be helpful to make sure there's a one-stop shop and that you can go to one place and that you could find the information to have a full understanding of what it means. I'm not sure that it would directly relate to that, but I think it raises the broader, question and issue of when a change gets made, where can you find it? And if I look onto one planning page or one county page, will it have the latest information with the latest verbiage and terminology, or will I have to go back and forth and cross-reference? And, we shouldn't have situations where people have to go back and forth and cross-reference. So look forward to the follow-up where we can talk through that. We can talk through some of the reorganization as well and do a status check. So stay tuned and we'll follow up on that. But I think it's a good takeaway here, and I think we've got the ball rolling in the right direction, and this report really helped us to get there. So thanks.
Councilmember Balcom.
Thank you. I appreciate this report. It's very timely, given that we're talking about the master plan of highways starting tomorrow. So it's a really heavy lift to get residents to read the master plan in the first place. And so the more transparency in terms of changes, the better, because if they go to the trouble of reading a master plan, we want to make sure that all of the functional master plans are incorporated in terms of looking at those specific things. So I appreciate that you're already working and looking at that. And I think from the perspective of this street designation, the related speed limit, I think, is something that we get questions about all the time. And so from that perspective of why streets are categorized in a specific way and how the speed limits are determined, I think that's information that's most relevant to constituents at times, because we get calls all the time, how can we change the speed limit, both up and down? So I think that's important. I don't want to get too far into the master plan of highways and transit because we'll spend a long time on that, but I think it's important from a transparency perspective for these functional master plans as to the scope of the plan from the beginning, right? And the transparency for all residents to understand what's going to happen in this master plan. And you have been very helpful in the M83 discussion, where the Clarksburg community, one of the most impacted communities, was completely unaware that a change in that highway was even part of the scope of the master plan. So I think that transparency needs to start when the functional master plan begins, in terms of how do we notify all impacted residents. Now, it's difficult in a plan like the pedestrian master plan or the road classification discussion, because it does impact everyone. But that's where the transparency needs to start, is if you are going to be impacted by this discussion, we should make sure that residents are aware. So that's it.
Do you want to comment?
If I could, so I'll take the first comment. So master plans do not establish posted speed limits. They have no power to do that. That is the role of MCDOT on county roadways and the State Highway Administration on state highways. What master plans do and can do is to set target speeds. So we will have this discussion at T&E over the next couple of weeks, and we will make sure to explain this concept as well, because it is confusing to people. But a target speed, like a master plan, is a vision. It's a vision for how we want the road to function. So as part of the bills that were discussed earlier in 2022, the council directed or established a target speed for each street classification. Now, future master plans and councils can modify that, but it did provide us with direction on what the initial vision for the speed of the road is. Now, that speed, again, doesn't get implemented right away. It might take big changes to the roadway for the implementing agencies to feel comfortable reducing the posted speed limit to the target speed. But it is a tool to help us envision what we want the road to be like in the future.
Thank you for that, Councilmember Belcom. This is another reminder that in this conversation, all of these documents and these policies are ongoing. They are, I would use the phrase, living, breathing documents, kind of like the Constitution, that there's an evolution as the community continues to grow, as new policies are enacted, that they have a relationship between them all. And again, this slide that's before us is proof point of how many master plans and sector plans change based on the approval of one, which was the pedestrian master plan. And so clearly you've heard from the joint committee that each committee has its homework assignment. The PHP dealing directly with planning with regard to implementation of this, and the T&E, which will soon begin work on the master plan of highways and transitways. And so the interrelationship is there. And without any other comment, appreciate staff, Mr. Trumka, again, for your OLO report, council staff and planning staff for the ongoing discussion. Ultimately, we want more residents to have more information, and as has been noted, we want council to have more internet access as well. So we will work on all of those things in tandem, and with that, we're adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.